I'm trying to see if everyone in.
Mr. Lewis, you can turn on your video now.
Let me see. So I turn it on.
Wonderful. So I believe I see all our board members that are present. Am I correct? Yes.
Jonathan still,
Okay.
we're still waiting for Jonathan. And he'll be back, I would hope, shortly.
You guys see me?
No, Mr. Lewis.
No.
You can hear me though, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes. There's Jonathan. Okay, good to go, Max.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming back. It's 4 o'clock. We are resuming our hearing proceedings here at the Board of Behavioral Sciences. My name is Max Disposti, and I'm the board chair. And our honorable judge will take on the proceedings right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Disposti. Mr. Lewis, I was able to hear you. I'm still not able to see you. Is it your intention to appear by camera as well today?
Yeah. Mine says start video, but it has like a red line through it. Keep punching it, doesn't do it.
I'm trying right now to ask you to start your video, see if it pops up.
It says start video, just click it.
Yeah.
It says your camera has been occupied by other apps. Please release.
If you have, do you have like Teams or one of those other video conferencing apps? You may have to actually go, this happened, I only know this because this happened to me the other day, and you actually have to force the computer to completely shut down the other app that uses your, and that might work.
Let me see here.
So if you do I don't know what computer you have, but if you have like Control Alt, and then you go in the task manager, if there's like Teams or WebEx or some other video, if you force close it through that, because that was the issue for me. I was locked into Teams, and so Zoom wouldn't let me open up my camera because it was occupied by the other app. So that's my unofficial technical advice.
Okay.
This is the court reporter. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not techie, but I know also if you go into your settings, and if you goes into Zoom, if you go into Zoom under your setting and enable the camera.
Perhaps what we can do, if Mr. Lewis would like to appear, we can just allow him to log off and come back in, and because usually that solves the issue.
Let me do that. Log off real fast.
No problem.
Okay?
That's fine.
All right. In about 5 minutes, couple minutes.
Couple would be great.
Max, I'll keep an eye out for him and get him right in.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I think sometimes when you're doing this, you log back in, Zoom will prompt you to accept the camera. So hopefully that's the. Otherwise, we did have petitioners in the past. They didn't appear, which is totally okay, right, Your Honor?
Yeah. That's fine. I just wanted to give him the opportunity, and I know usually it's good for members to see the face as well. But yeah, I mean, if it's impossible, I'll just ask him if he's okay and to appear by telephone if need be.
Mr. Lewis, you're back on. Feel free to unmute. Oh no! Wait a minute.
Was it?
There he is.
Mr. Lewis, if you can hear us, you're looking mute from my screen, so you may have to unmute yourself.
He's actually got two.
Oh, he has. Okay.
That's the reason why of the conflict then.
Okay, let me remove one.
Yeah. That's the reason of the conflict why you couldn't have access to the camera. Oops, we lost him.
I'm trying to remove him, he's not going.
Can you see?
We can't see, I was trying to, it looks like you might be logged on two devices. There he is. There he is. Okay, very good. Now that worked.
Excellent, great. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thanks for bearing with us for this really long day and being so patient. And I'm glad we're able to see you by video now. All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Ms. Litz, you're still with us, correct?
Your Honor?
Yes.
Would you mind just letting him know that he's very far away from the camera? If he'd like to move closer, that would be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox. Good comment. Is that a little bit better?
Even closer would be better.
You can go even closer, Mr. Lewis.
Lost that. That good?
Closer.
Even closer.
We cannot see you.
There you go. Much better. Much better.
Okay.
Right.
All wearing glasses, Mr. So that's why.
All right. All right. And Ms. Litz, you have a thumbs up if we're good? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just want to make sure we have the record. All right. All right, we are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California. We're here to review our last petition of the day, which is a petition for early termination of probation filed by Donald Charles Lewis. That's ASW 80267 and OAH case number 20201000356. My name is Wim van Royen. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings for the State of California, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter today. Today is November 5th, 2020. This hearing was noticed for 8:30 a.m., but we've had several petitions in a row. It is now approximately 4:07 p.m., and we are conducting this matter via Zoom video conference due to the COVID-19 public health crisis and the governor's executive order N-25-20 dated March 12, 2020. I'll also let the record reflect that we did take a roll call of our board members earlier on in the meeting, and we do have a quorum of the board present today for purposes of hearing this petition. May I please have formal appearance by the Deputy Attorney General?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General.
Good afternoon to you, Ms. Crawford.
Good afternoon.
And on behalf of the petitioner, if you could just state your name for us for the record, please.
Donald Charles Lewis.
And good afternoon to you as well, Mr. Lewis. I know we were introduced off the record informally briefly, but formally welcome. In terms of the procedures for this hearing, if you've been listening along, I'm sure you've heard this several times, but I'll quickly summarize. First, the Deputy Attorney General will proceed to provide us with an orientation regarding the procedural history of this case, and will then also introduce your petition packet. After that, you will have the right to make a presentation under oath to explain why you believe your petition should be granted. You also have the right to call any other witnesses to testify, and then you yourself, as well as those witnesses, would be subject to questioning by the Deputy Attorney General and the board members. The board today is particularly concerned with the rehabilitation that you may have engaged in since the discipline was last imposed. We're not so much concerned with relitigating all the previous events that led to the discipline, although we may briefly touch on that simply to be oriented to the procedural history. You can assume that the board has read your petition packet carefully, and so there's no need to repeat everything that's included in the package, but you can certainly highlight or emphasize any portions you feel would be appropriate. Then after the hearing, the board will go into a closed session to deliberate. You won't receive an oral decision today, but you will receive a decision in the mail at some point in the future. With all that being said, do you have any questions before we get started with the hearing?
No.
All right, thank you so much. And then at this point, I'll turn it over to Ms. Crawford to present the procedural history of the case and introduce the petition packet.
Thank you. Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the state of California. I am appearing pursuant to Government Code Section 11522, and I'm here to assist the panel in fact-finding. My role is not adversarial, but is intended to protect the public interest. As a background in this case, the petitioner
Ms. Crawford,
applied...
I'm so sorry. This is Judge Van Royen. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just got a message from staff. They're asking if Mr. Lewis can still move a little bit closer to the camera for purposes of the web recording. Is that better, Sabina? All right.
As long as with Cesar. Did you hear me?
No, I didn't. Sorry, Sabina.
Oh, that's okay. Cesar?
All right. Thank you so much. All right, let's get back to it. I'm sorry, Ms. Crawford.
That's okay.
Yeah.
As way of background in this case, the petitioner applied for an associate clinical social worker registration on February 22nd, 2016. The petitioner's application was denied, and a statement of issues was filed on June 16th, 2017. The basis of the denial was that in 1997, August 2001, and October 2001, the petitioner was convicted of indecent exposure. In each of the 3 incidents, the petitioner was under the influence of methamphetamines. In the 1997 incident, petitioner walked out of his apartment while nude from the waist down and was seen by neighbors. In the August 2001 conviction, petitioner walked into an abandoned backyard of a home and exposed his penis. A neighbor and her 8-year-old son were walking by and saw him. In the October 2001 conviction, the petitioner stood outside of a store and masturbated while standing 10 feet away from a female store clerk. The petitioner was a registered sex offender. A stipulated settlement was adopted on November 1, 2017, granting petitioner's application and placing him on probation for 5 years. In addition to the standard terms and conditions of probation, he was ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation, take a law and ethics course, engage in a dependency support program, abstain from substances, and drug test. He is fully compliant in all aspects of his probation. He is no longer required to attend dependency support groups or drug test for a modification on June 19th of 2019. His probation was told for 4 months from November 1, 2017 to March 5, 2018, and 2 years remain on his probation term. At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to introduce our exhibits.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Exhibit 1 is the board memo regarding the probation status of petitioner. And I'd like that marked and introduced.
Any objection to Exhibit 1, Mr. Lewis?
No.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the notification of hearing to the petitioner of today's hearing date. I would like that marked and introduced.
Any objection to Exhibit 2?
No.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 is the certification of registration history that I would like marked and admitted.
Any objection to Exhibit 3?
No, that's okay. Sure.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 is the petition for early termination of probation and the attachments in support that were filed by the petitioner. I'd like that marked and introduced.
Any objection to Exhibit 4?
No.
Exhibit 4 is admitted.
And the final exhibit is Exhibit 5, which is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order for the underlying statement of issues. And I would like that marked and introduced at this time as well.
Any objection to Exhibit 5?
No.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do not have any other information to present at this time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Crawford. All right, so Mr. Lewis, now is your opportunity to present your case in support of the petition. Is it your desire to testify today?
And I think mainly just to, given the nature of the offenses, just to show to the board that I take full responsibility of my person I was back then, but that also,
Before you do that, let me swear you in if you're starting your statement, because otherwise we can't rely on your statements. We have to make sure they're sworn in. So I just want to make sure it all gets considered. If you could raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly state, under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you so much. And then, as I mentioned before to some of the other petitioners that didn't have counsel, since you don't have an attorney to ask you questions, you can just testify freely, just as you started to right now. And I'm sorry I had to interrupt you. And then tell us whatever you believe is relevant in support of your petition. And then Ms. Crawford may have some questions for you, and the board members may have some questions once you're done. All right. Whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Okay. So as I was saying, I think it's important to convey to the board that I take full responsibility of my behavior back then, but that I also want to demonstrate to the board. My main argument for this is that. Notwithstanding the seriousness and the gravity of those offenses, but that the time since the offenses and the time it is now. So the last offense was in 2001, October sometime, and this is 2020. So this is 19 years, and I have had no further interactions with the law. So long story short, I have learned my lesson. I do think I can the board can assess me as being to operate safe within the public. But to convey that to the board, and I know you have a copy of my statement of rehabilitation, I would like to read that to the board. Would that be okay?
That'll be fine.
Okay. So to members of the California Board of Behavioral Sciences, it is with great enthusiasm, hope, and purpose that through personal narrative, I am given an opportunity for the second time to attempt to convey to members of the board a clear understanding of the personal circumstances I was once faced with that eventually led to an 18-month period of incarceration within the California prison system. With this said, I will now say that during my life, I must admit from time to time, I have either knowingly or unknowingly engaged in criminal activities. Consequently, these actions have put me in a confrontational path with the law and, as stated, have resulted in my imprisonment. However, through this experience, I came to learn a lot about life. Thanks to our justice system and a newfound awareness, I have stopped defining myself using the past and instead consider myself a new person. I have learned how important it is to have proper guidance and how a lack of direction can make one lose focus in life and immerse themselves in unrewarding actions. In my case, the loss of direction came when I started engaging in drug abuse and found myself in court facing 3 separate charges of indecent exposure. Today, I'm grateful that I'm not the man I was in those years. Not only have I acquired a direction in life, but I have also pursued gainful education and social work that has allowed me to help others and live responsibly. In 2001, the court delivered to me a guilty verdict for indecent exposure, which is a serious crime. I had already been convicted for 2 similar counts earlier. At that moment, I truly felt a permanent sense of loss and that my life had reached its end. However, even before the arrest, I had already lost hope in living. This was evident in how I lived with a lack of self-esteem or vision. Bereft of moral and social anchors, I became unbalanced and susceptible to bad influences. Upon imprisonment, I realized just how far I had gone in damaging my life. Realizing how destructive I had become made me concede that I needed to work on both my life's vision as well as my connection with God. Doing so allowed me to start rebuilding my self-esteem. 19 years later, I can truly say that I am a changed man. I no longer engage in the use of mood-altering substances, and I live responsibly. Apart from being in harmony with myself and other people, I am also building my future through hard work, dedication, and education. In my teenage years, I engaged in drug abuse without worrying about the destruction that these substances were inflicting on my body, character, and not to mention the enslavement that comes with addiction. I lost good friends in the process and increasingly attracted other drug users in my circle. Often I would hallucinate, and sometimes these hallucinations I wound up masturbating in public places, unaware of the harm this would cause in other people's presence. I still wonder today where I would be had I not been arrested and charged for these crimes. Most people who have found themselves in such situations unfortunately rarely get a second chance for redemption. But I did get a second chance for redemption, and I am truly grateful. Today, redemption includes constant awareness of the mistakes of my past, and when possible, warning others who are heading down a similar path of the almost certain dangerous consequences of drug abuse. The distressful acts that I engaged in were indeed shameful, and as mentioned, I have since resolved to disassociate myself from substance abuse. Also, as mentioned, my recovery includes intervening in the lives of those who are currently blind to the almost certain devastation that comes with unabated drug abuse. Therefore, when I got off parole in 2005, my resolve to transform my life for the better and pursue a meaningful life continued. Personal reflection upon the mistakes of the past led me to realize that my life up until this point lacked true internal direction or satisfaction. Therefore, continued personal meaning in life led me to the conclusion that life was all about helping others. Non-judgmental support and guidance from others who truly believe that transforming my life for the better was certainly possible led to my interest in counseling. In 2009, I completed a bachelor's degree in sociology with an emphasis in social welfare at California State University, Northridge. Upon completion, I joined California State University, Los Angeles for a master's in social work degree, which I successfully completed in 2012. As an active church member and a person who regularly attends NA and AA 12-step meetings, I also regularly offer my support and guidance to anyone who may benefit from the story of my past. As a consequence for having been convicted of 3 separate offenses of indecent exposure, I was put on the requirement of lifetime registration as a sex offender. But with respect to this lifetime requirement, I am most grateful at this point in my life to be able to say that this is no longer the case for me. I approached the court on December 13, 2010 to seek a certificate of rehabilitation. I was elated and happy when the court, convinced about my change in behavior, granted me the certificate. A person can only get a certificate of rehabilitation if the court believes that they can no longer be a repeat offender. That the judge believed in my change really makes me happy and determined to make amends with my past. Moreover, while commenting on my sexual offense record, the judge noticed something of the sort, that the net had been cast too wide in my case. The judge went further to say that a lifetime requirement of registration as a sex offender was inappropriate. When the judge made these comments, I cannot convey enough to members of the board the degree of encouragement, support, and reassurance I felt. At that moment, I truly felt that my life could go on for the better, especially in the area of gainful employment. I believe that every person experiencing problems with addiction can rebuild their life. My desire to help individuals through social work is intrinsic, and the education I acquired has helped me to understand different individuals better. I am also aware and have internalized the ethical codes of conduct for my profession. Hence, I believe that I am well suited for this profession. I no longer feel embarrassed about talking about my past because it does not define me. Instead, the past is where I derive lessons. My past has served to shape me to the individual I am today. I would also like to mention that I am thankful that our criminal justice system is designed to give individuals such as myself a second chance. In closing, I would only add that I see my past as a lesson and have employed it to improve my life as well as the life of others. I believe that encouragement and assistance in my career will enable me to serve people better, and thus I hope for a favorable response from members of the board with respect to my ASW intern number.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Crawford to see if she has any follow-up questions for you. Ms. Crawford, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about what led you to beginning to use drugs?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I apologize for
1 second. I'm hearing a lot of echoes in the background, and you don't need to, we can go off the record for a second. I just need to resolve the audio issue.
There is a lot of feedback coming to us.
Feedback, yeah. So let's make sure everyone is muted other than Mr. Lewis and see if it's clearer.
I'm going to put my headphones back in. Maybe that's what's causing the issue.
I think that was it because there was nobody else on live. So.
Okay, great. All right.
Okay, my headphones are back in.
Okay, let's give that a try. Okay, Ms. Litz, we'll go back on the record. All right, we've just hopefully resolved our technological issues. Ms. Crawford, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, what led you to start using drugs?
We're hearing it again.
I think it might be like echo, Mr. Lewis.
Let's stay off the record again. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know where it's
I don't hear anything. I'm in the garage. It's pretty quiet. There's nobody in here. It's just the echo of my voice.
I think it might be echoing like from your computer, Mr. Lewis. So I don't know if you might want to mute the computer while the question is asked and then unmute it afterwards. That might help. I could be wrong.
Okay, you want me to mute it right where you ask the question?
And then, unmute it to answer. Let's try that. I think that might work.
I'll raise my hand when I mute it, okay?
All right, let's go back on the record. We'll try. If you could once again ask your question, Ms. Crawford, and we'll see if we can avoid it, the feedback. Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Lewis, can you tell us what circumstances led you to start using drugs?
My drug use started when I was in high school recreationally. I went to high school in Canoga Park in San Fernando Valley. I was living with my older brother, so I was using marijuana at that time, cocaine recreationally. I graduated from high school in Canoga Park in 1984 at the age of 17. I attempted to, I got accepted into CSUN at that time, but my recreational drug use didn't allow me to be academically successful at that time. So drug use for me was first started out recreationally. At that time in 1986, I moved back from San Fernando Valley back to the area of Riverside County and Lake Elsinore. My first drug of choice when I moved back was alcohol. And actually, I'm pretty sure you have on the records, before I started having problems with meth, I copped 3 DUIs. So I think I was in my late 20s, mid to late 20s then. Drug use was recreationally. I wasn't serious about life. I had no idea, didn't have the idea frame of mind that I have today about gainful employment, career opportunities. But so as they say, I crossed that invisible line of addiction unknowingly, as evidenced by, various arrests and so forth.
And when did you overcome that addiction?
After the third offense. So I think my third offense, actually, after the second offense, I went to the Salvation Army. I did the program out here in Paris, California. I completed the program for 6 months. I was put up in an individual apartment by the Salvation Army, but I guess I just wasn't done with using meth and crack, and I relapsed, and that's eventually led to that third offense. I did half of an 18-month prison sentence, but after that, after I got out, I was put on 3 years parole. I was in a halfway house. I went back to Riverside City College, completed my undergrad, and then I started to embrace sobriety more seriously and started to think about, what did I want to do for the long term.
So you were sober today? Okay. You're still muted.
Yes, since October 2001.
Did you give me a date?
Not an exact date in October, but I always just say October 2001.
Okay. And what are you sober from?
Meth, crack cocaine, alcohol, marijuana.
How did you obtain sobriety?
So when I was, I went to have that self-realization moment. For me, my addiction through, offenses like that, I would almost wind out in the street as well, homeless and so forth. So my last run, I was facing similar devastation and, just a lot of, internal guilt, shame, remorse, worry. But at that moment, I kind of had my aha moment where I was able to reflect upon myself and kind of see what was going on. I was able to face certain triggers without those particular triggers being any more of a trigger for me. For me, my trigger out in this area was certain places, just going up to certain places and getting served with the whole gamut of the scene and so forth.
What were the types of places that you learned to avoid?
The particular areas, that was actually in Lake El Sedor, Riverside is where I'm from. And actually, I recently bought a house out here in Sun City, Menifee, which is close by, but I have relatives still out in those areas. But as I mentioned, just going around certain places, it's just the whole scene, going up to the individuals getting served and just being a part of the whole scene with the, drugs and females and everything. It's like with those types of substances, when you just think about that stuff, when you're in your addiction, that's where the compulsion starts, and it's really hard to really turn that back. Yeah.
Did you ever take were you ever engaged in any formal dependency rehabilitation program?
No, what got me sober for me is 12-step meetings. So my sobriety path, sobriety again started in 2001, and I've been working in this field since about 2012 now. So the types of things, including the medications they used to help individuals with, circumstances that I had, they didn't have that back then. So I got my foundation at the Salvation Army, going to meetings. So it's just back then developed, hanging around a good group of friends. We're trying to, both all of us had just gotten out of prison and so forth. We have the same halfway house. And so for me, going to meetings was my foundation, and it still is.
And why are you asking?
Oh, if we can, Mr. Lewis, if you can remember just to mute yourself, then we won't get that echo. Perfect, thank you.
Why are you asking for early termination of your probation?
In all honesty, I understand that the board's main concern, and even your main concern, is that, would I be a risk of harm to society? And I understand that's your main concern. But as mentioned, it's the time since the offenses. Mainly the time since the offense. I think that's evidence that I have learned my lesson. I think that the element of self-control should be evident by that. The fact that there has been no, interactions on any sort on my part with the law since then. The achievements that I have achieved, just to put it in plain, simple terms, I appreciate the board's position, looking out for the welfare of society, but, as myself, my therapist, and other people on my side say, enough is enough.
What kind of work do you currently do?
I've been at Telecare Corporation since July 2017. So my title right now is Social Worker Clinician. Telecare is a corporation based out of Alameda. It partners with various counties throughout California to provide mental health services. I've been to 3 different programs. Currently, I work in a crisis stabilization unit, which is a 24-hour mental health urgent care. I work as a clinician with my ASW registration number.
Okay. And it's telecare. So is this something? And since you work for telecare, is this something that's done remotely, or is it in person?
No, our services are provided in person. We're essential employees. So as mentioned, that's a 24-hour, my current program is a 24-hour crisis unit. So individuals are coming in there when they're in crisis and they need the support and services of various staff members, various professionals.
Is there anything that you have learned throughout your probation that you believe is going to be helpful to you in ensuring that you would not violate any of the board's laws in the future if probation was terminated?
Well, just going through the whole process, it's, I certainly didn't take this process lightly. I mean, I was very excited when they, given my offenses, when they said, okay, we'll give you a registration number, but you do this, these particular terms, the terms of probation. I started with, like the other individuals, having to call in 7 days a week, and I did that for over a year. I went to 3 meetings a week. I had the psychiatric evaluation, and now my last thing, I was seeing the same therapist for once a week, but now we're just down to every other week. So I didn't take any of this, that's stuff you had to go. I don't take it lightly. I know I would never, put myself in jeopardy like that again. I mean, there, I have my mother's 89, and but I'm well aware in the inevitability of her passing or whatever, hopefully not too soon, but I'm well aware to reach out for support. I'm well aware of being overstressed, overwhelmed. I have family, I have friends,
And are they your support system?
Family and friends. I go to church, friends at church, people at work. I help others who are now just beginning this process, who also have criminal backgrounds that are coming in, trying to get in the system with the Board of Behavioral Sciences. I give them hope and encouragement. I share with them some of the details of my story, given the nature of my offenses. Of course, I don't share too much of the details, but I let them understand, very closely, where it's led, stuff that I'm facing, that I have faced.
You applied for your registration in 2016. What interested you about social work that led you to studying and eventually applying for a license?
Well, so I was doing parole in Riverside, I decided to go back to school. I finished up my GEs at Riverside City College. I transferred back to CSU Northridge. But when I was in the bachelor's program, I still didn't have an idea that I would wind up in social work. I knew that when I was getting close to finishing my bachelor's degree, I still wanted to do something. But one of the counselors at the school, I told him about my background, the particular offenses that I have. And so he told me, about this particular degree, MSW degree. And he said, in some places, yes, you will have a problem, with, meeting guidelines, not being able, meeting guidelines, rejection, not, being accepted for employment. But he said, the majority of the places with populations, particularly with adults, you would not. And that this would be a good idea. So that's where I got the idea from one of my counselors in my undergraduate program.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no other questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crawford. All right, I'll turn it over to the board members now, and I will start at the top of the alphabet, I think we're at this time. Mr. Disposti, do you have any questions for Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I do. Yes, Mr. Lewis, thank you and good almost evening. Looks like night already, but well, first of all, congratulations. It looks like you have been 20 years sober last month. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So in your recollecting your story, you mentioned a little bit about, where you live and some of the possible dynamics that could be triggered.
Mr. Dispositi, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but a board member left the room.
Oh, which board member left the room?
Board member is returned. Never mind.
All right. Let me just remind our board members, again, we want to be accommodating of everyone's need to get up and take a break, but it's really important that all of us hear all of the testimony, especially if you're going to participate in deliberation. So please let me know, or staff member, if you need a break, or if I don't see it, just let staff know, and anyone can jump in at any point and let me know. So that's just really important. Make sure we all hear the testimony. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Arnasinge. I appreciate the heads up. Mr. Disposti, I think your last question was pending, if you want to get back to that.
Sure, thank you, and thank you again, Mr. Lewis. I was referring, if I misunderstood, please correct me. But I believe I caught in you were sharing your living situations and the area where you live, and also some possible triggering dynamics in the area because you're geographically close to another area where 20 years ago you experienced your challenges. And so first of all, the first question, sorry, are still there dynamics or situations that might be triggering for you?
Well, not the particular area. So I mentioned that one of my main triggers was, traversing through particular areas because it was just the whole dynamics where you would go up to certain individuals, be part of their scene, get your stuff and stuff like that. When you start to think that stuff, way back before 2000, just before 2000, that was steering me a real compulsion to follow through and get my substance. Actually, that was an area in Riverside, but actually that particular area in Riverside, that scene has long since been cleared out. But on top of that, so at the time when I was just, right, even when I got out, because when I got out and I did parole, I was in a halfway house. I was very close to that area. But so somebody told me how to handle that triggers, because my problem was, just like I described to you, there would be nobody around, when you start thinking of that, that compulsion become very strong. So somebody told me, you could always just keep a phone, you can call somebody, AA. And I know that sounds simple, but back, like I mentioned to you, my foundation of recovery stemmed from 12 steps. It didn't stem from DBT or practicing mindfulness or even taking medication to help with the cravings or even meth. So before that person gave me that sort of recommendation, I really didn't know what to do with that particular trigger. But when that person told me that, it was just like a mental, it's just like a mental thing, like the air coming out of a balloon, the pressure was really released. So I'm not in fear of that particular trigger anymore. Definitely not. And that was one of my main triggers.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. It seems to me that what you're saying is that you learn your own coping mechanism, and for everyone could be anything really. It could be, breathing or just turning around, whatever that is that works for you. So besides the geographical dynamics, which is totally understandable, so I'm not trying to investigate on that whatsoever. It's more like try to understand in your everyday practice, there might be dynamics that could put you in a place, emotionally speaking, where all of a sudden you had to apply those coping mechanism. And how would you address that if it happens right in front of you, let's say as you're helping someone, that all of a sudden, for some reason, those dynamics are appearing to you? How are you coping with that? And are you able to measure that? Are you able to understand what you're actually experiencing that dynamic yourself?
Yeah, I kind of get a feel for what you're asking. The simple answer is crisis survival strategies. However, I would like to say, I'm not being egotistical, but since dealing with since 2001, I really haven't felt the mental stress or anguish where I would, being in close proximity associated with some of my triggers, where that's, stirred within me an urge or a craving to use substances. But one thing my therapist and my other family that they kind of, stress upon me and constantly remind me of, emphasize, is to just kind of be aware of stress, be aware of overworking, overwhelmed, just to kind of take it easy. Like my mother says, Donald, why don't you go take a day for Donald? Go do it yourself. And I live in the area of Menifee, which is in, the Inland Empire, Riverside County. So I go to the lakes, I go up, do a lot of hiking, stuff like that, do exercise, and so I try to take a lot of time for Donald, Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Sure.
And yeah, I'm very familiar with the area. So I know I'm in Southern California too. So, I'm a public member of this board, as you might know, and I know you have heard pretty much all the proceedings today since this morning, so you must be tired too. But one of my concerns could be, and I'm sure you're very aware of this, there is a lot of dynamics attached also to what brought you to that revocation of the license and probation in regards to your past, which it was about 20 years ago. So as a member of the public, of course, the public would like to see, as you are already showing and sharing with us, what are the possible concerns that they might have about what happened in the past, not just in relation to the addiction, but to the public exposure and so forth. Because obviously, when you have a license, we can tell you who to work with, right? So it's more like, can you speak more to that? Because I know that the element of addiction here at the board, obviously, we deal with that every single time, but sometimes the dynamics around it need to be understood, or perhaps, so if you can help me a little bit, sharing a little bit, how would you make the public feel comfortable, not just in relation to the addictions, but what the addiction brought you to do in a situation that obviously it's considered to be of, it's a criminal act, which you already paid for, but it's something that people mostly fear, right, in relation to their kids and their family members, so forth. So how would you articulate that so that we can hear you more in relation to that?
Well, so I've been asked this question before, and the simple answer is that, so with the use of those types of substances, crack, methamphetamine, even heroin, when you use those drugs, there has to be some sort of cessation, some sort of relief to the individuals who use that. It has to be some sort of thing, some sort of relief that goes along with that. Now, a lot of people that I hung around, when they got under the influence of meth, it resulted in breaking and entering. It resulted in violence. For me, it resulted in masturbation. You know, I mean, I knew when I was using it, I knew friends who went, you know, did other type of crimes. I knew I didn't want to do that because in the back of my mind, I knew the offense would be a lot more serious. I have to also say on my behalf that back then, I didn't really realize the serious ramifications of what I was doing, using speed and kind of trying to engage in some sort of self-gratification, you know, by using that, you know, masturbating in public, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, too, is that, you know, actually, along with that, there's never a point when you're using drugs that there's a point where there's cessation. You never reach a point of cessation. And that's just, you just, and, you know, an individual just learns that through, you know, a hard lesson learned. That is, you know, the consequences they face. So, you know, that's, in all honesty, you know, that was for me, you know, what I engaged in. As far as like the public, as far as me reoffending, again, I would point to, you know, the length of time since the offense. The fact that I have not, for me, I decided to abstinence from everything, alcohol, everything. When I was on my parole, my mother said, well, Donald, you can drink a beer. We don't have to have you all like this. But I said, no, you know, because, you know, I wanted to really change my behavior. But again, so I would point to, you know, the amount of time since the offenses. And also I was going to mention, with a lot of individuals I have worked with, my therapist, even some of the lawyers, when I was first, they were telling me about laying out the terms of probation. You know, I think they kind of saw the good side in me, and they asked me, they said, do you think that, you know, in so many words, they asked me, do you think that you need to go through this? And I said, no. And a lot of individuals, they would also say, yeah, I kind of agree. You know, they were just kind of joking, right? But they said the process should probably be, given the amount of time, first give this individual a registration number, and then if there was another gregarious offense such as this, then put them on these terms of probation. You know, that would be my response to that.
Okay. Thank you. A last thing, just because I'm not really good in math, I was having a problem to calculate the end of your probation, because I know your license, you told a year out, right? There was a tolling on your probation time. Am I correct?
Because when she gave it to me the first time, I was under the impression that you had to be in a job position where it required for you to have a registration number. So I was at telecare in July 2017, but I started as a substance abuse specialist. But when they gave me my number, it was about maybe, I don't know, I think in December, in January, until a supervisory position came available, that they gave me the position where I got promoted to that.
Okay.
So I think that's why my thing was told.
Okay, no, and then also, I hear the feedback, so maybe just. And then, in my question also was, at this point, the probation time ends. I was having a hard time to calculate when is the end of your probation time, year-wise and month-wise.
It would probably be, I think I'm already 3 years. So this is 21, this would be 21, 22, right. 23, November 2023, I believe.
Okay, because that will include a year that was told.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be almost 2 years. Okay, perfect. Mr. Lewis, thank you for your time and for your answers. I really appreciate that. And I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Disposti. Mr. Ehrlich, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. Good afternoon, evening, Mr. Lewis. How are you doing? My question is, you said that you had were granted a certificate of rehabilitation. That was in 2010?
I believe so. Let me look at my thing here.
It was around 2010? Around
that time, yes.
Was that your decision to do that, or was?
No, my main purpose in getting the certificate of rehabilitation was to attempt to get taken off the registration requirement, the sex registration requirement. So that turned out, I consulted a few attorneys. They told me about the process. It depends on the particular offense when you're required to do the registration thing. So my particular offense was an offense where they would consider, taking me off the lifetime registration requirement. That was what I was trying to do then.
Did you do that process on your own?
No, with an attorney. You have to do an attorney. It's very expensive.
It can be. My last question is there anything that you do on a daily basis to keep yourself maybe centered, focused on your rehabilitation? If you get stressed out, is there a particular thing or things that you do or something that you do on a daily basis to, keep you on the straight and narrow and anything like that? Again, I've been on the straight and narrow since 2001, but I'm a single individual. I'm not married. I don't have any children. But so every day, because I'm single without any children, I get to put my focus on myself, inside of myself. I keep focus of, where I want to go, this process here, hoping for this to be successful. I'm hoping to, have the rest of my hours accumulation almost through by this time next year as well. Be ready to sit for exams. So I just keep, looking forward. I do a lot of fun stuff for myself, exercise. I go travel up and down the coast. I travel down south a lot, the southern coast, San Diego and so forth. And I'm aware, I try to not overload myself, take on too much, Okay.
But again, I would say that the ability to keep my focus on myself allows me to, be where I need to be and be the person I need to be and, do what I need to do.
Got it. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you for your candid testimony today.
Thank you, Mr. Ehrlich. Ms. Friedman, do you have any questions?
Am I muted or unmuted?
No, you're unmuted now. We can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for being here. I appreciate it because it's getting very late. I have two questions to ask you. During this pandemic, we've all had to spend a lot of time alone by ourselves. And I'm wondering if that's put additional pressures on you in any way that you've noticed, or have you not noticed?
Well, there's just not really. There's, of course, the shutdown of all the places. The gyms have gone on and off from opening and closing again. However, there's one down here that is open. It's a very nice facility, so I get to keep up with that. Out in this area, I usually, on the weekends, I go, do all my study time. I used to at Starbucks, but of course that's not available. A lot of the public places where you go sit, you don't have that, except on the outdoor places. That's fine. But I do hear that as a problem with the clients I work. I do hear clients, reporting distress over the confinement, the cut off from their relationships, their friends at school and so forth, their normal associations. But for me, that hasn't been too much of a source of distress.
That's what I was in your work for telecare.
Yes.
In your work for telecare, you are working, private companies are contracting with them for your help. Is that correct?
Well, telecare contracts with the counties. So it provides behavioral health services for Riverside County, which is where I'm at. It has a few different programs.
Are you actually seeing people face to face, or are you doing this virtually?
No, we meet with clients at the crisis center. So again, I mentioned my current position is that a 24/7 crisis stabilization unit. So individuals come there, when they're in some sort of mental health crisis. And this particular place where I'm at, which is in Paris, it's very busy because the individuals come from Riverside, ETS, Emergency Treatment Services, ITF,
And what kind of service are you specifically providing?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is Judge Van Royen. I'm sorry, Ms. Friedman, to interrupt your question. If you could just remember to mute yourself, Mr. Lewis, that way, because I couldn't hear her question very well, and I'm not sure our court reporter could either. Thank you. If you could restate your question, please, Ms. Friedman. Thank you so much.
I'm just wondering, because these people are under pressure or whatever's happening in their lives, I'm wondering what kind of service you provide, and I assume you have to stay separate from them and wear a mask of some sort.
So we wear a mask, and when we go to the center, we check our temperature, we do the usual COVID screening, and so do the clients. But this is a program, where you are working face to face with clients. There's no plastic shield. You don't shake hands. You do have a mask, but you may be sitting maybe 4 feet or even 5 feet from the client, and you will be talking to them face to face to see what their presenting issue is and to see what you can do for that individual to alleviate distress, or what type of referrals you can make to improve their particular crisis situation.
Okay, so you may. Okay, I see. All right, well, thank you. Very complicated talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. I'm sorry. I just, again, I'm just trying to make sure we have a clear record. I didn't mean to interrupt you unnecessarily. All right. Next, let's see. Ms. Herwick, please, if you have any questions.
I do have a question. You talked about, how important 12-step recovery was for you in being sober. And so I'd love to hear kind of what your experience is right now with 12-step.
Well, my experience right now is helping others use 12 steps, particularly steps 1, 2, and 3. With step 1, I try to help them understand the concepts of powerlessness and unmanageability, particularly that perhaps the power to overcome their challenge, addiction, whatever it is they're trying to overcome, even certain mental health symptoms, doesn't necessarily lie solely within the individual. We try to cultivate within them an attitude to look outside of themselves. Then with step 2, we try to get, I try to get them, and others I work, we try to get them to conceptualize what a source of, be outside of self, what a source of strength or higher power could be. And being that I'm a person in recovery, we try to direct their focus to sober individuals and so forth. Try and get them to accept that. The challenge when you're using 12 steps as a theoretical approach to practice, if you will, to help individuals, of course, is to deliver the steps. Let's just make it simple to both believers and the non-believers. So that's kind of like the approach that I take as far as teaching them about a higher power outside of self, greater than self, outside of the individual.
And so you're still active in your own 12-step meetings and your own recovery?
I go to 12 steps occasionally, maybe like once a month, but my main thing that I do for recovery is that I go to 2 different churches out here in Riverside. I go to Harvest, I go to Pastor Lori, you may have heard that, and I also go to another church that's pretty big out here, Sandals, is also in Riverside. It's a recovery, it's individuals who are in recovery.
Thank you. No other questions.
Thank you so much. Mr. Maddox, I believe you're next, if you have any questions.
So yeah, I actually do. So I have a question and a comment. So my only question is, so what are the probation requirements you are currently subject to?
The only requirement that I have now is to go to therapy every other week.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just want to say, oh no, go ahead.
And I appreciate it very particularly with this therapist, Steve. I've been with him over a year now.
My picture.
But we both agreed that it's time to move on. that enough is enough. Therapy was, was definitely valuable, but enough is enough.
Well, I appreciate your candor. So I would just like to say it is really important to me as a practitioner. I'm one of the LMFT members that we have people in our field who have lived experience, people who haven't just gone to class, but people who have struggled with addiction, have made poor choices, and have turned their life around. And because I'm an advocate of equity and justice and ensuring that people have a second chance, because we all make mistakes. You are a poster adult. I was going to say, it's not poster child. You're a great example of someone who would be able to significantly contribute to our field because of where you've been, your ability to maintain your own sobriety, and your ability to help others sort of walk down that same path. So I just want to thank you for coming today, and I really appreciate all the work that you've done. So thank you.
I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox. Mr. Ranasinghe, did you have any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, have you addressed power dynamics inside your psychotherapy?
No, not particularly. Not exactly sure what you're referring to.
Sure, sort of the power dynamic between males and females, between psychotherapist and the patient. Have you addressed that at all?
No.
Okay. Have you, at the point of conviction, did you take the sex offender conviction program or the sex offender program?
That was never offered to me.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you very much. And that's Mr. Sovek next. Do you have any questions for Mr. Lewis?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for staying with us for this very long day. Earlier on, when you were giving your testimony, you were talking about that at the time you went through your recovery, there weren't things available like DBT, some of the other more intense programs looking at trauma, EMDR, other ways that we now, as more modern psychologists, look at substance use disorders. With all of the movement that we've had in the field, do you feel that any of those techniques would be something that would be important as an adjunct to your ongoing recovery, since you have shifted away from many of the systems that got you to where you are right now?
So you're asking, like, me engage in any of these other particular type of therapies now would kind of like further secure my foundation in recovery? Well, the fact of the matter is, so what I also teach clients, based upon my own, is DBT. Particularly the crisis survival strategies insofar as how to manage urges and cravings. Before I was at telecare, I was primarily in substance abuse counseling jobs. And I work with a lot of people in the first 30 days, first time coming to treatment ever, trying to get their first 30 days. And I was just, so I would use a lot of DBT to try and make sense of their experience and to try and explain to them how it's possible for them to obtain their first 30 days of sobriety. So DBT is a theoretical approach that I also, use when I work with clients.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sovek. And then Ms. Wong, do you have questions for Mr. Lewis?
Just a very short one. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Lewis, thank you so much, and nice to see you again.
I remember you, yes.
Oh, yes, I remember you too. Since we remember each other, just like to catch up from last time we met. So the board did make the decision to reduce your frequency of psychotherapy to twice a month. So tell me what happened, what area that you worked on? And that's question number one, about your therapy. The second is what changed from last year, June 2019 to now?
Well, I think what has changed is that our hope that we could finally see an end to this, and we do, both my therapist and myself, and we do mean finally get this requirement lifted. We worked on a lot going through stressors in my personal life. As I mentioned, my mother, my auntie, how to handle stressors. But, constant, interaction, with my family members. In the inevitability something serious should happen, I would have them for support. And we just talk about, a lot of the times in therapy sessions, we do talk about, we're planning about this meeting, when is it going to come about? We do think, we both, my therapist and myself, we do think it's appropriate at this time that we go ahead and finish therapy, that we complete these terms. Yeah.
So it looks like, you have been putting a lot of hope, to see the end of this tunnel and hoping to just start a new page of life, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. To just have the registration number, finish the accumulation of my hours without having these requirements attached to it.
So, let's say if, your petition is granted, that you will be getting, you will not be on probation anymore. So how will this change your life? Or maybe more specifically, what kind of plan do you have professionally, personally?
Well, it just means that, that the requirements are lifted. I'm just going to continue to move forward with the accumulation of my hours, my supervision hours, to study for the exam, work in my job. Once I'm not going to try and do any more promotion opportunities until I sit for an exam, because, there's no shortage of mental health clients, as we all know, these physicians can be very stressful sometimes, So I'm just keeping my load light at work. I'm just accumulating my hours. I would feel, less of a burden mentally to, not to have any probation requirements attached to me. Mm-hmm.
So you really are practicing. So you really are practicing one day at a time or one page at a time. So, so the last question really is like, do you have any long-term goal, maybe like to do to work with a different population? Because right now you're doing crisis, which is demanding. And yet, do you have plans to go into the more long-term, individual therapy, maybe even like private practice, that kind of direction?
I don't think I want to go into private practice. Since I've been with telecare, I've worked in the FSP outpatient program. I've done field work. I've also worked at an inpatient facility. This is my second time around at a crisis stabilization unit. I was in one in CSU San Bernardino. My next stop is to become the clinical director with my license, and unencumbered on probation. That's my, next thing that I'll do, but I'll take my time getting there though.
Awesome. I wish the best for you. And, hopefully, you're going to have your dream come true, to become a LCSW. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I have no further question, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. And Mr. Lewis, again, just checking to make sure you've had a lot of questions. Was there anything you wanted to add before we concluded our hearing today that we haven't already discussed that you want to bring to the board's attention?
Just want to say thank you again. Grateful for having the opportunity for second time to get another chance, to move forward.
Terrific.
Thank you.
And again, just to make sure we got everything, no additional documents other than what's already been admitted before, correct?
Correct.
And you don't have any additional witnesses to testify on your behalf?
No.
All right. Then that concludes our hearing on this petition matter. Thank you for your patience and hanging around all day. We very much appreciate your time and testimony. At this time, the record is closed and the case is submitted for decision, and you will receive the written decision in the mail. In the meantime, stay healthy and best of luck for your future endeavors. We can go.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I will just get the information from our court reporter, and then you've probably heard this before as well, Mr. Lewis, but you'll get served with a copy of that form in case you ever want to order a transcript of the proceedings today. Okay? Perfect. All right. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Litz, I'll take that from you.
End time is 5:15.
5:15.
Yes, correct. And 47 pages.
47 pages. Thank you so much for
You're
all
welcome.
of your hard work today.
Oh, you bet. You bet. My pleasure.
Pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. I'll now turn it back over to Mr. Disposti for, I don't know what we're doing in terms of breaks. I do know, I'll just state for the record that we will be going into a closed session either directly or after we take a break, because pursuant to section 11126C3 of the government code, the board is authorized to meet in a closed session for discussion and to take action on the disciplinary matters, including the petitions heard today. Mr. Disposti.
Thank you. Thank you for actually saying that. So,
I feel like it's a legal requirement. We have to, so.
And definitely, perhaps, 10 minutes break will.
Oh, Max, can we talk about that? Because I appreciate that. It is 5:15, and it is encroaching on life. So,
okay. So
can
what
we
would
talk
you like?
about that? Because at a certain point, I'm going to have to withdraw just because it's getting later in the evening. So.
Okay, Mr. Maddox, what are you suggesting to do? To go straight in closed session?
I mean, I'd like to have a conversation. I'd like to hear what other people think. I mean, I don't want to just impose what I think, but I would like to have a conversation rather than just saying 10 minutes. Because like I said, that gets us to 5:30. So.
I would prefer to go to directly in there. I mean, I have my kids being dropped off to my office right at 5:30. So I mean, I don't know how much
I would also prefer to go directly into it.
Okay.
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 I'm just
going
to get up and get some eye drops.
Okay. I think let's do that, and then we are going closed session so we can actually, discuss the timing and the issue of possible quorum and things like that. But so that we can dismiss the public at this point, and we can publicly reconvene tomorrow for our second day of Board of Behavioral Science at 8:30 a.m. on the same channel, and we will have opportunity for public comments and an agenda that's been posted already on our website. So I believe, Steve, I believe we stay on the same link, and we allow people to lead the board that is officially closed at this moment.
That's correct.